Welcome to Clever Orbits. I am one of your hosts, possibly your most awake host, Louis Brantmeyer. We've been around for almost a year. I really got to go look that up to see when our anniversary is, Richard, because, that's something to celebrate.
It's either late March or early April.
Yeah, so we're close. We're real close. And we've been around for a year talking about science fiction that we love through entertaining conversations that often involve philosophy and lots of humor. I have my co-host, Richard Futrell, and my other co-host, Tyler Brantmeyer. Say hello.
Hello.
Which one of us?
Oh, you already greeted everybody. You already said hello. Okay, so Tyler has decided that for the evening he will be selectively non-responsive, which is okay. We can handle that. That's why we've got three people. That was what he said right before we started. Anyway, yes, you can say hello too, Richard. Come on.
Hello.
All right. So now that all of you know who we are again, the episode that we are paying attention to this week is from Season 6 of Star Trek Voyager. It's called Child's Play. And I was really impressed, and I really enjoyed it. And I was surprised by how good it was. I didn't remember this episode at all, especially the beginning, which was really dumb with the freaking potatoes. But we'll get to that. That was kind of funny. And then we were all talking about how because it's daylight savings time, we're kind of tired, or they're kind of tired. And I had the experience watching this episode. It was really mind-boggling. It was late at night, and I was watching it on Netflix, and I swear, I would get through the first 30 minutes of it, and then I would be really excited to see what happened next, and then I would fall asleep during those last 15 minutes, and I'd get little fragments, and then I'd rewind it, and then I'd have that same experience again, and then I'd rewind it, and then I'd have that same experience again. And it was until finally, I took something to help me wake up or something like that. I don't even remember, but yeah, it's.
So the review of the episode is that it requires medication to stay awake to watch this episode.
I wouldn't say that. I think I took an essential oil or something. It was not like a medication, but it was roughly equivalent.
It requires chemical supplements.
There are certain episodes in movies that do, but this was not one of them. This one was very engaging by itself. So I'd say it's a good episode. I like and resonate with Icheb. He, to quote Jammer, he plays the less is more version of the Borg character, and I like that about him. He's really simple and straight up. I appreciate his predicament, and the episode was well done and well written. I mean, this is the kind of thing you would actually expect from Next Generation. And Voyager at its best is following in those footsteps, making slightly different footsteps of its own. So anyway, initial thoughts from you guys.
Well, I kind of feel so one thing this episode does well is it has a plot twist that you really don't see coming, or at least I really didn't see it coming. And the result of that is that you sort of have to evaluate it in parts. There's the episode before you know the plot twist and after you know the plot twist. And up until the plot twist, I was not super into it. And the reason I wasn't super into it was because I felt like they had set up what seemed to me to be a false ethical quandary, which is should we let this kid stay or should we make this kid stay with his parents even though he doesn't want to? And that didn't seem like much of a quandary to him because you just ask him and he said yes or no. And it's and that should be it, right? And so that whole ethical quandary in the first half or so didn't really strike home for me. But then there's the twist that it turns out that E-Chip is actually this genetic weapon, and that his parents are sort of, I guess they are his parents, but they're really these Machiavellian engineers that created him. And that sort of spins the episode in a whole new direction where now it becomes about this question of what is the relationship between a child and their parents that created them, possibly for bad purposes, and is that a reason for us to say children should be associated with their parents? And so it made itself good. I like the second half, or it was really the last third in terms of time.
That's interesting. Yeah, I mentioned Jammer already. sort of resonated with his review, which is that, the first 2/3, that's a really good episode unto itself. And, yeah, I think you could just ask him, but, it's a subtler question than that. It's at what point being or coming from a real sense of cultural and upbringing sensitivity, at what point does the child have the right to choose for him or herself? And this became pronounced when the Voyager crew kind of conspired to help Icheb realize the value in his parents. They had to work to make that happen, and it was just a matter of chronology. He happened to be a member of the Borg for most of his adolescent life, and then he happened to be on Voyager most recently. So that's what he's familiar with. That's what he expects. That's what he's comfortable with. And
you don't think he's old enough to decide? He looks like he's 16 to 18, right? He's probably old enough to drink in most countries other than the U.S. He's probably old enough to vote.
That's a question. Is at what point in our culture, people get emancipated at 18 or whatever. And I'm not 100% sure that he was 18. However, the subtlety is not, does he have the right to choose? The subtlety is, does he know what he is choosing? And does he know one from the other? And does he have enough experience or exposure to either one of the options to choose one intelligently?
Well,
and that's what they were committed to. That's what made the episode interesting, was okay, he could go either way now that he knows what it's like to be the child of these parents in this culture. And there are limitations, to be sure, but if I were him, I definitely would have chosen Voyager. Who wouldn't? Voyager's so much cooler. But anyway, go ahead.
Well, is he really being offered a choice, though? It seems like Janeway is pretty dead set that they're going to drop him off on this planet. And there's not a point where she asks him. And her arguments with 7 of 9 are all not of the form, we should let him decide. They're of the form, we're going to leave him there.
Well, 7 is the one standing for his actual interests on Voyager and his actual right to choose Voyager if that is his choice. And then she steps aside when he chooses to be with his family. It seems they're casting Janeway versus 7, which they've done many times before, in such a way that they're ideologues. 7 is he does have the right to choose. He is strong enough. He is intelligent enough and old enough. And Janeway's well, no, we really should just give him back to his parents. These are the ones who would have had legal guardianship of him already or whatever. And so, that's kind of how I read it anyway.
Yeah. Once it looks like the kid's going to be staying, though, then 7 of 9's all talking about how it's going to be dangerous and how it would be trying to convince him it would be unethical to go. So she's at first she's pushing for him to have a choice, but it's because she really wants him to stay because she likes him.
Yeah, and she eventually gets that. She gets, what I love is 7 of 9's self-awareness, calling herself out and letting Janeway know what's up while still having her commitment. Her commitment, she does actually have a commitment to Icheb freely choosing, being best served, best taken care of going forward, and she knows that her decision-making process and view of the situation is biased because of her experience with her parents, and then also because of her attachment to Icheb. And she's aware enough to notice that and to have that be included as a factor, the fact that she is biased, which is why I think she eventually stands aside enough for him to leave the ship. So, it's a huge advance for 7 as a character, too, that she has that awareness. Otherwise, she would just be acting out of, quasi-Borg programming, which, incidentally, as I look at this episode, it's really not a Borg episode.
That's okay. It's Borgish.
We learn precious little about the Borg. In fact, what did we really learn? Well, it was a great companion episode to Collective. This gives us some of what we wanted but we didn't get, where a Borg individual adolescent freed from the Collective is trying to find his way in the face of being liberated, which is great. But then we also get, the height of Borg fatigue. It's a Borg sphere, and all it really takes is a torpedo in a ship being tractored into the ship.
Yeah. Although it's still the case that every time you encounter the Borg, you still have to come up with some clever new solution. It's not like they've come up with something you can always do. there, it always has to be something new you've never thought of before, and that's always still a challenge. In this case, we didn't really see them struggling to come up with something. 7 of 9 just sort of said it, but at least the idea is there.
Yeah. So another piece to that is like you'd think that what happened in Dark Frontier, where Harry thought of the clever solution of beaming a torpedo onto their ship and then detonating it. Like, you'd think that the Borg would have developed some countermeasure to, like, scan ships that they are, bringing into their hold to make sure, all right, well, this one is free of bombs. This one will not explode. Or maybe have some protocol to beam stuff up. Or I guess maybe what happened is because that ship was destroyed in Dark Frontier, they didn't communicate that eventuality to the rest of the collective instantaneously. And the collective doesn't really know that that's something that can happen because that ship was destroyed with all the data that was collected by that ship about possibilities and about situations. So I guess I've got
Maybe
that
didn't
answer.
Get the info out in time.
Exactly. I also feel like for them to have a tractor beam generator, like it's for a Borg ship, the systems should be more redundant. They should have more auxiliary systems than a single, easily distinguished tractor beam generator on the outside of the ship. It should totally be like the shield generators from Collective that are just too deep inside. We can't get to them. That would have been...
I mean, at this point, and especially in Unimatrix, it's going to become clear that the writers have pretty much given up on the idea of the Borg as a decentralized, generalized thing.
Which is kind of tragic because they're very interesting. What do you think, Tyler? We haven't heard much from you. Did you like it?
I did. It subverted my expectations. Although I agree, it wasn't really a Borg episode. They're not so much referenced in any meaningful way as far as how we're covering the arcs that the Borg are pretty much all the episodes that take the Borg and explore the different facet of them. They don't really explore much. They're just there. What they do explore is how the Borg are fought, which is interesting. There's another new wrinkle, although it's sort of a twist on an old wrinkle. Back in season 5 of TNG, when they considered sending Q back with a paradoxical image of a polygon, a pretty ingenious way to infect the Borg by giving them an unsolvable problem.
Yeah, that one was actually more clever than this.
Yeah, this is basically, we genetically engineered this kid to fight the Borg. Like, it's in his blood to disable the Borg in a way that cripples them. So I thought that was pretty cool. I don't know. I thought it was pretty cool, but it felt like I'd seen it before. And it's well acted, for sure. Anytime I see Mark Shepard getting work, especially in something that's sci-fi related.
It's every time you see him getting work. Oh, you weren't saying because it's weird for him to be getting work. You were saying it's nice to see him when he's working.
Yeah, it's my way of saying I appreciate him as an actor. It was cool to see Mark Shepard in Voyager. And, he was
the lawyer
pretty much
on Battlestar, wasn't he?
That's right. He was the lawyer on Battlestar, and he has a long-running role on Supernatural. I forget which character he plays, but he's really good. And, of course, Garrett Wang gets to be the butt of every joke, or Harry Kim. I don't know. I don't know the behind-the-scenes story. I just know Harry Kim is basically just like, shut up, Harry. No one asked you how you felt. No one asked you what you thought.
What happens to him in this episode?
Well, Tom Paris is promoted, right? And he gets little box.
Well, no, you're thinking about Unimatrix Zero.
Yeah.
Oh, wait.
There's a very funny moment in Unimatrix Zero.
I mean, it is a great moment, and I agree, right? It's definitely poor Harry Kim. He says, "No box on my chair." Like, of course, Harry. Nobody likes you, and you.
And then there's just this awkward silence. No one responds to it.
I apologize. Yeah,
they
that's
just
not
sort of
part
look
of
at
this
each
episode,
other.
but yeah, they. They don't really even acknowledge his presence.
Except, so this is we're really going into the next episode, but I want to say this while we're on it. Is the Borg Queen even is in on it. What you notice is near the end of the episode when the Borg Queen shows up on the view screen, she doesn't say, "Oh, we'll see you later, Captain Janeway." She says, "We'll see you soon, Harry." It's just like, there's even a protocol in the Borg Collective to make Harry Kim the butt of their joke.
Good.
So, anyway.
Man.
Yeah.
Anyway, the episode was pretty cool, and the reveal that they were just using Icheb instead of actually wanting him back to accept him into a fold and mold him into a well-rounded individual in their secluded society that's agriculturally advanced. I thought that was a pretty cool thing, except all it really did was get Icheb back on the Voyager, where he can continue to be a part of the show, can continue to be a presence that we appreciate. I kind of like Icheb as a character, so I was like, I'm glad this happened, but
Yeah, so there were a couple character moments I really enjoyed, and then like one or two that was just like ridiculous. So first of all, I like how all the kids like have science projects, and they're all generally pretty shitty, except Icheb, who's just badass.
Well, it looks badass.
Thing.
It's a blinking pyramid, and he says it's a gravity thing. And Janeway's just like, oh, that's wonderful. She just buys his advertising copy. All we know is it's blinking pyramid.
Well, I mean, you know, it's the universe we're in, right? Blinky things with lights and the shape like pyramids, like they do things.
Immediate acceptance. I believe you immediately. Don't run any scans. Don't check the work.
I'm pretty.
Or maybe it was checked.
I'm pretty sure it was functional in the universe.
I'm pretty sure
it was functional.
I like to believe also that they would test any submission to this so-called fair and prove that it works.
Which is interesting that they're having a science fair. Like this is the year when Voyager definitely became like Next Generation Part 2. I mean, like.
Are you thinking of Captain Picard Day?
Yes, exactly.
Yay, Captain
Something.
Picard.
It's for the children. Remember? It's for the children.
Do it for
I'm
the
a
children,
public
Jean-Luc.
figure. And then the Admiral's staring at him and it's just like, you egotistical bastard, or something like that, and he realizes what she thinks now. But anyway, there were another couple minutes or moments that I liked when they're in the conference room and Janeway gets annoyed at Seven. She gives Seven this like glare, this like very stern glare, and I was just like, that's awesome, because it was really intense and like really aligned with Janeway's character, much like the later on, Janeway being kind of grumpy because Seven got her up in the middle of the night and she's, you know, drinking her coffee. I thought that was great. Like it kind of adds a slight roughness to her that we didn't quite ever really get, maybe from Picard or the others. And then the other thing, this didn't make any sense to me. When they're on their landing party, when they first meet Icheb's parents, Tuvok is there, and you see him on camera a couple times, but he doesn't say a single word or do any meaningful contribution to the scene. Just like, why is he there? Like, okay. So,
contractual obligations.
Yeah, they've got to include him in a certain number of scenes, so he's just off to the side.
That's right.
One interesting thing in this episode was that because of the plot twist structure, it really seems like 30 minutes in, the plot is done. All the like in the scene where Icheb's going down to the planet on the transport, I was thinking, okay, the episode's over, and then I looked at the time and there's 15 minutes to go, and I was left thinking, what are they going to do? And so I thought, is it going to be just 15 minutes now of Neelix cooking while he's muttering to himself about his fantasies? Then it wasn't that.
You know, any time it's not Neelix, I'm happy.
I really think
Giving
we
Ed
should
the
only see
Matrix
Neelix
again.
when he's cooking.
Neelix can apparently replace Tuvok on the bridge.
Oh yeah, doesn't Neelix show up on the bridge? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. I really think that the humans play a peripheral role in this ship, or not the humans, the humanoids.
I am 100% convinced that is false. I mean, like, whenever the computer detects something that is outside the range of what's expected, that's what they're there to do, is to interface with the computer and tell it what to do in response to this new situation. So, like, I mean, I got the joke. The joke was funny, but the actual contention is silly. I mean, like, they have to be there to tell it what to do. To some extent, it is automated, and it is highly complex and sophisticated, and it doesn't really need interference or interfacing. But to some extent, it definitely has to have. Like, all right, so there's a Borg here. What do I do?
We need
I
to
don't
be
have
there.
a clever strategy. I need someone on the bridge to come up with one, or else we're all gonna die. You know?
You do need
cleverness. But it does seem like the solutions they come up with could have been computed. I think they're really just there to perform maintenance, to make sure the system keeps working.
Clean the carpets.
Oh. Yeah, that dust will really screw with the software.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I just fundamentally disagree in a radical way.
More data is required.
More data is required. Yeah, we have
more data is required.
Yeah. I'm surprised. It looks like I'm almost out of notes on this. Are you ordering him off the ship so that he can be assimilated again, quote unquote? Each ship's freedom of choice is the fundamental issue here, and the incorporation of someone into a culture, any culture, against their will is what's interesting here. It's basically, it becomes kind of a Borg episode when you think about how, like, this is just a normal cultural practice, like to take somebody from one culture and to transplant them into another. Like, that's exactly what the Borg do. They just do it in a really dramatic, forceful, obvious way. Whereas with this, it's like, no, this guy's comfortable here. He's happy here. He wants to be here. So instead of, so what we're going to do is, like, we're going to shovel him off to this new culture, and he's just going to have to deal with it, which I'm glad that his independence and autonomy are respected. I especially liked at the very end of the episode when Seven of Nine and him are talking, and he's kind of like, oh, yeah, I'd like to study some more. And she's like, all right, that's great. You don't have to go to bed yet. And that was actually moving a little bit. Individual freedom and autonomy, like that's important. I like that.
Yeah. What I wrote down was 7 of 9 says you're an individual and you have the right to determine your own destiny. But wasn't this episode about how his biological characteristics were encoded maliciously in his DNA?
Well, there's some like throwaway line from the doctor about how they can debug that or something, right?
Okay. What does it mean to be an individual when you're just expressing a program that's written in you biologically?
Good question. Don't know. I don't think
Star Trek wants to go there.
I mean, maybe.
Can they go there? They can. But would anyone want to watch that? It's all about money and viewers. I'd watch it. For sure I'd watch it. I know we would. But
I mean, to some extent, he thwarts his destiny, and so it's about, he doesn't do what the people who designed his DNA designed him to do. But the DNA still determines the course of how this goes, and he's not freed because of his own volition. He's freed because of other people's cleverness.
Well, luckily he has chosen in his lifetime so far to sufficiently align himself with people who were clever enough to save him. Not intentionally,
right.
But just happened to,
right.
Yeah. It's a distinction between, like, he's not a walking bomb that feels a compulsion to walk towards the moment and location of his final explosive destiny. He's a latent explosive device. Like, it's something you can activate or like, you have to work. You basically have to remove his autonomy anyway in order to put him in the right place at the right time to to have him go off. And then there was that whole scene with, like, evil parents. Like, it was really clear that they were being milked for all that they were worth. Even after, see, that was another thing. Like, maybe we could have gotten some hint earlier on that there was something wrong with them. That would have been nice. But it does feel
I like the suddenness. I like the real turnaround. It was really surprising to me.
I thought that was perfect, the way these parents, they actually care, but they also want to make sure the Borg don't assimilate them, so they have to make these choices in order to stay under their radar because they're so close to a Borg conduit. How close? It's very close, according to space travel, but they're basically right there. They have to find a way to fight. They found it. They can still be pretty empathetic and caring parents, but still be cold enough to know that the Borg are there and we can't just ignore them. So I like that twist. It was cool.
It doesn't really seem like they're pure evil.
They're not.
I think they do have real affection for the kid, and sometimes saving your species is more important than saving your kid.
Oh, what a zinger!
Yeah, that made a sacrifice.
That's one we're all going to have to face at some point in our lives.
Probably there's something that they wanted us to explore with that whole question. Like, okay, do the ends justify the means on the one hand, or should we commit genocide to save our own species, or should we commit murder in order to commit genocide in order to save our own species? Which is really the question. And probably the answer is no. Probably I wouldn't do that. It's not the right thing to do.
I mean, the Star Trek answer is always no, and it works out anyway. And so they never have to actually face the consequences of being ethical.
No, they don't.
Well, they don't.
Man,
they
so
are
optimistic.
blissfully ignorant. They just drive away. They just go to another solar system and another sector. They don't know that. I mean, it would be funny and interesting if they had like a retrospective episode at the end of Voyager where like the camera brings us back to different places throughout the Delta Quadrant that are either horrifically ravaged, like this one planet is completely overrun and destroyed by the Borg.
The Bernali were eventually assimilated and their technology taken. Everyone's dead. Or everyone's assimilated.
Or like we have other, places where people are happy, like where somebody's got a replicator that they're now using to survive or something. They kind of do this in the Voyager relaunch novels after Full Circle. They find some way to go back to the Delta Quadrant, and they send like a convoy of ships, and Admiral Janeway is actually in command of them. And they have people in the Delta Quadrant who are like pissed from the first time Voyager came through. They're like, yeah, why did you do all this stuff? It really ruined everything. And anyway,
that sounds cool.
That's a tangent. I think we've mostly squeezed the juice out of this episode. I think I'd give it a basic A. I'd give it a 9 out of 10. It was decent. It was solid. There wasn't anything really terrible about it. It was well done. It was interesting.
I'd give it an 8.
Let's see. I'd give it an abandonment out of ingenuity, out of parenting. It captured my attention 100% of the time, 33% of the time, 75% of the time. Other statistics. Let's go with a B.
Tyler, none of what you're saying makes the slightest bit of sense.
All right. I'll give it a second letter of the alphabet, the English alphabet.
That is closer to your usual, makes just a little bit of sense. All right. Well, this has been Clever Orbit. Next week we're going to do Unimatrix 0, parts 1 and 2, because it's the next serious Borg episode. There's a lot of cool stuff there. And thank you guys for being on. All right.
Fun.
Live long and prosper.
I'm prospering.